When I, 26 female, met my boyfriend, 30 male, I knew he was the one for me. He loved me, cared for me, and made sure I never lacked anything. Within 2 years, we got engaged and fixed a date for our wedding. One evening, my fiance told me his younger brother, 28 male, who was overseas, would be returning for the first time in 3 years, and he wanted to stay at our house until he got an apartment. My fiancé wanted to know if it was okay by me because we were cohabiting and he didn't want to make me uncomfortable. I said no problem. We were getting married soon, so his family was mine too. He was very happy because having his brother in the same house would help him catch up after being away for years. He also wanted me to get to know his brother because we both were integral parts of his life. His brother was his last surviving family, so I understood why it was important for me to get along with him. I had no problem with him staying with us, and I told my fiancé so. My fiancé's brother arrived a day later than scheduled, and my fiancé was out of town for a business meeting, so I had to pick him up. I had seen photos of him, and I knew he looked a lot like my fiancé, but nothing prepared me for the handsome, muscular young man I saw at the airport. Despite the 2-year age difference, he was more well-built than my fiancé. He must have recognized me from the photos my fiancé sent to him because he gave me a slight wave. When we got together, he invited me for a hug, and when I accepted, he squashed me against his chest like we were lovers instead of strangers who were bound by brotherhood and engagement. He was a bit rough, but that turned me on, and I don't know why, because I hated violence. Despite the barrier of his cloth, I felt the six-packs and the muscles, and I knew I had lost my sense of reasoning because I wanted him. He exuded this grace and manliness that my fiancé had in bits. He was the better version of my fiancé. What I felt was not love because he didn't make me want to cuddle with him unless it would end up in tangled sheets. My fiancé was supposed to be back that day, but one of his clients could not show up for the meeting, so it was postponed to the next day. It was just me and his brother at home. I dressed skimpily and constantly flashed my cleavage at him. He pretended not to notice my actions, and when we were done eating, he wished me a good night's rest and opened his arm for a hug, which was weird because he hadn't said much more to me since we met, but he had hugged me thrice. I stood up and hugged him, and that was when I noticed the effect of my seduction. I was so happy knowing he was not immune to my charms. Sadly, nothing happened that night, but I retired to bed with the resolve to try harder next time. I was a sexy lady, and I had never been rejected, so I took his rejection as a challenge. When my fiancé came back the next day, his brother became a bit chatty. He congratulated my fiancé on our upcoming wedding, and then he commented on my body subtly. He asked my fiancé why he chose a busty girl when he preferred the opposite, and then he began talking about how I was thick, unlike the other girls my fiancé had dated. He glorified my stature until I had to sneak away or risk having my fiancé notice my blushing cheeks. My second chance for seduction came sooner than expected. That same day, my fiancé went to visit his friend who was hospitalized. I was putting on my lingerie when my fiancé's brother came into my room without knocking. He called me a hoe for trying to seduce him, and then he promised he would give me what I needed. One minute he was yelling at me, the next he was warning me like a caring father. I didn't know why he warned me of the consequences of what we were about to do if my fiancé ever finds out, but I didn't care. In bed, he was everything I expected and 10 times better than my fiancé. When we were done, we went our separate ways. It was as if we had a nonverbal agreement to continue our affair because from then, we would get together whenever my fiancé was not around, and in his presence, we would become two strangers, cohabiting who didn't have a cordial relationship. My fiancé even asked if we had a fight, but I assured him I would never do that. I reminded him of my promise to get along with his brother. My fiancé's brother suddenly changed his mind about staying and decided to leave. He took my fiancé out to eat and have some brother-on-brother time before he left. My fiancé came back alone crying like a child, and it scared me so badly because I thought he was injured. I had never seen a grown man cry like that. I was about to call the ambulance when he asked me why I cheated on him with his brother. He asked me why I had to destroy their relationship. He kept crying and asking me why I had to do this to him. I asked how he knew and was livid when I learned that his brother had snitched on me. That lowlife. When my fiance asked why I had to choose his brother over him, I snapped. Was it not obvious? His brother was an Adonis. He was better looking and younger. His brother wouldn't cry over a mere affair like he was doing. His action irritated me to no end. I took off the engagement ring I had on and held it out to him, but he didn't collect it. He stared at the floor for a long time and then drew me into his embrace. He apologized and told me to forget about the affair and his reaction. He informed me that his brother was out of our lives and wouldn't come back anytime soon. The news broke my heart, but I pretended like I was okay with it. Despite everything that had happened, I was excited on my wedding day. I looked so beautiful, and I was bubbling with enthusiasm as I watched our guests stare at the projector with anticipation. My joy turned into horror as a clip of myself and my fiance's brother in a compromising position in our living room came on. Turned out I forgot all about the surveillance camera hidden in a corner. Everyone I knew, my friends, family, their friends, my colleagues at work, and our neighbors listened with shock as I whispered sweet nothings to him. Until then, I had never wished for death, but at that moment, I knew I wanted to die. Death was a better option compared to this disgrace. When I looked at my fiancé, the sneer on his face told me he had done that and was enjoying every bit of it. It was the last thing I saw before I blacked out from the shock. Story 2. I cheated on my husband not once, but twice. Here's the story. We have been married for 13 years and have 2 kids. We are both 34. Somewhere along the way, things got stale, as they do after you have kids, get comfortable in your roles with each other, etc. In this staleness, my husband became married to his work. He is very good at what he does and making money. I know at first he was making a better life for me and my kids, but at one point, it became about his success and how far he could go. I have always appreciated his work ethic and desire to provide for us, and he was extremely good at it. He began pushing us away, and had even gone as far as to say he wasn't sure if he was still in love with me, but just comfortable with our relationship. I didn't read too much into that at first because I knew that this must be something all long-term couples go through, but it began to weigh on me. I threw myself at him. I bought lingerie, I made little surprises through the day for him, I texted love notes, blah blah blah. I begged for counseling, but he refused time and again. And then I realized he was married to his job. He was out of town half the time, and when he was home, he was firmly planted on the couch playing video games or surfing Reddit. He gets a job offer that will move us away. I asked him not to take it. The money wasn't much more and would have uprooted our family. He decided to take it, put our house on the market, and traveled back home on the weekends. Shortly after he took the job was the first time I cheated on him. I had been in contact with an ex-boyfriend from high school. I had no sexual attraction to him, it was truly just friendship. He was visiting my town, and I agreed to go see a show with him. From the moment we saw each other again, sexual tension was high. We got drunk, I kissed him, and ended up sleeping with him that night. I knew it was wrong. I had no intention of it happening, and the guilt was crushing. At the same time, it was exhilarating to be desired again. We continued to chat on Facebook, Skype, talk on the phone occasionally. I eventually began pushing him away and ignoring his sexual talk, and then it was just over. We still would chat occasionally on Facebook, but it was always short and no hints of sex. I never intended to tell my husband. The next time it happened, a friend of a friend expressed interest in me. Our mutual friend said, "Stay away, she's married." Well, he didn't. We became Facebook friends, and eventually I slept with him too. This went on for about 2.5 months. He ended it because he wanted to start dating someone who was actually available. I didn't want it to end. I was so caught up in this bubble of being desired and fulfilled. We stayed friends and still spent a good deal of time together, though not sexually. My husband decided to check my internet history because he was suspicious of our friendship. He found evidence, confronted me. I denied it at first, but I came clean about him. I didn't give all the details, and we both went through the harrowing experience of him prying it all out of me. He decides to take me to a polygraph exam. I failed it, and we went through another round of him prying details out of me about the other affair. Now it's all out in the open. We have been going through counseling, and things are honestly better all the time. He is a more attentive father and a husband, and I am being transparent and honest with him about everything. I let him check my phone records, texts, internet history. He has access to all my emails. I don't complain about this at all. I understand it and am willing to be an open book. I also signed a post-nup that takes my name off the house and everything else we own. I know that probably wasn't a smart move, but I thought it would be a huge step in gaining his trust back. This all happened over the past 7 months. Last week, he asked me to submit to another polygraph out of the blue. I am resistant to taking it because I feel like it's not constructive. It doesn't move us forward. He feels like there's something else I'm not telling him because he had to drag everything else out of me. I feel like if I take it, it's just going to hamper his healing and keep him from learning to trust again. I am terrified of failing it, though I will be telling the truth. I know that we will never be the same again. I make no excuses for my choices. They were wrong and I feel horrible. We are both mourning the death of our relationship and the death of what our relationship could have been. I truly believe that we love each other and want to be together and can have a new future. I don't know if we can do that if he doesn't take a leap of faith. Comments. I'm not going to lie, and I hate coming off as being so crass, but I will. Instead of having your husband force you to take a polygraph and continuing to lie until you finally tell him all the details, why don't you just come to terms with the fact that you are a horrible person? First time, sure, write it off as a mistake. There was alcohol, etc., etc. But the second time, straight up whore. You will never get his trust back, and honestly, you don't deserve. You're right. At some point, he will have to take a leap of faith, but you don't get to decide when that point is. Look at it this way. You were deceiving him. He found evidence. You lied about it. He persisted. You partially came clean, but still lied by omission. He made you take a polygraph. You lied again. After he continued to persevere, you eventually told him everything. For you, it is settled. For him, he's still on that path of not knowing whether he can trust you or not. As far as he knows, you are both still in that cycle of him persisting and trying to get at the truth and you denying him it. So far, you've only failed polygraphs. Why is it too much to ask that you pass one?